Dragon's Dogma 2 is a special game. It's not for everyone, admittedly. Much has already been said about its friction, the way it refuses to hand out luxuries we've come to see as standard in the industry, and yes, its completely pointless microtransactions. Still, it's special because it's full of tantalizing secrets. It's the kind of game that you just can't wait to talk to your pals about what you accomplished last night, whether that's flying miles across the map on the back of a griffin, or solving one of those maddening Sphinx puzzles. And after 80 hours or so with the game, I thought I'd seen every single secret that Dragon's Dogma 2 had to offer. But then, just as I thought we were wrapping up, it hit me with the biggest one yet. That being a final act pivot, one you can completely miss if you get any ending other than the true ending, that made this a truly unforgettable sequel for me. Before we get there though, we need a bit of context. Dragon's Dogma 2 was essentially billed as a redo of the original. Though a sleeper hit, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen was to its sequel what Demon's Souls was to Dark Souls, or Nier was to Nier Automata. A cult favourite that established the unique mechanics, ideas and themes that would be brought to mainstream attention by a more refined and popular sequel. Even pre-release, its developers were openly talking about how this sequel wasn't going to focus on introducing new mechanics or features, but rather refining and furthering what was already there in the original game. Famous which were infamously hamstrung back in 2013 by a lack of time and resources. The feeling then was that Dragon's Dogma 2 was being positioned as more of a reboot than a sequel, a fact seemingly confirmed by its title screen, which simply reads Dragon's Dogma, not a 2 anywhere to be seen. For now. The idea that Dragon's Dogma 2 is more of a reboot than a sequel is seen in its plot as well. This is already a mythology built around the idea of cycles, to the point where Dragon's Dogma 2 is literally a do-over of the first's plot. In universe, the cycle is established as such. A powerful dragon arrives and steals the heart of the Arisen, essentially the Chosen One, who then becomes destined to strike the dragon down and save the world, starting a new cycle where eventually the dragon will reappear and will have to do the whole thing all over again, once again, to save the world and allow it to continue existing. When the universe itself literally reboots, then it makes sense that Dragon's Dogma 2 hits the same beats that the first one did. To paraphrase a series with a similar concept, there's always a dragon, and there's always an Arisen. The thing is though, Dragon's Dogma 2 is not a reboot at all. It is a sequel, only after about 80 hours or so of gameplay, at least when I was doing my completionist run. For the majority of that playtime, you are playing out the cycle as normal. You become the Arisen in a strange fantasy land that exists in a vacuum thanks to the Brine, an entity that lives in the water and destroys anyone who dares attempt to venture beyond the seas. You fight through the world, amassing strength and allies before confronting the dragon for one final boss fight. Cue credits, jump into New Game Plus. However, before this boss fight, you can actually engage Dragon Dogma 2's secret ending by crawling around its heart while it's flying you to the boss arena and using something called the Godsway Blade to kill both it and yourself. At this point, the two fall into the water below, their bodies enveloped by the mysterious brine, and it seems like a cool secret ending, rejecting your fate by destroying the two central figures in it. The cycle is broken, cue credits, and jump into New Game Plus, right? Well, it's at this point when Dragon's Dogma 2 plays its true hand. After breaking this cycle and defying their destiny, the Arisen awakens back in the open world. Only now, it's a world crumbling due to the set storyline being disrupted. The sky turns an apocalyptic red, wormholes act as gateways for powerful dragons to descend and destroy the towns you've spent the entire game protecting, and the brine has risen from the depths of the sea to envelop the world in an encroaching wall of destructive fog. And it's at this point that the developers choose to drop the game's true title, showing us the words Dragon's Dogma 2 for the first time ever over the backdrop of this about-to-be-destroyed world. It's confirmation that the cycle of Dragon's Dogma is over, and now the sequel properly begins. And what comes after this is a short but sweet confrontation with the game's true antagonist, the Pathfinder. For complicated lore reasons, the Pathfinder acts as the hand of the Great Will, an entity that has constructed the world of Dragon's Dogma around this cycle of Dragon and Arisen in order to stop its complete destruction. The latter's journey to destroy the former is what stops the entire world from ending like it is now, and it's all scripted by this mysterious godlike being. Think of this Great Will as essentially the author of the story. And I mean that literally, as the Pathfinder explains that the destinies of everyone in the world are pre-written, each given distinct fates that allow the cycle of Dragon and Arisen to continue. He then goes one step further than that though. It's actually implied through the ending dialogue that everyone's being is literally constructed to revolve around the Dragon and the Arisen, that their primary reason for existing at all is to be part of your story. So the world is essentially one big stage play without anyone in it knowing that they're in a stage play. Everyone has their roles and spots to hit in perpetuating the cycle, and in that context, free will is nothing but a myth. Anyone straying from that script threatens to destroy the fabric of the entire world, exactly like you've just done. And honestly, I hope this reveal sounds as cool as it was to experience in the moment, because it absolutely blew my mind. And even better, suddenly it made some of my biggest criticisms about Dragon's Dogma 2 suddenly make more sense. In the early hours especially, I was constantly asking why the world of Dragon's Dogma 2 fluctuates between intoxicatingly immersive and jarringly artificial. Why was such painstaking effort spent on creating a convincing ecosystem and detailed cities, only to fill them with NPCs that didn't have much more to say than, "Oh, it's a hard old life, ain't it?" Why do merchants have a talk button when all they have to say is essentially, "I'm a merchant, do you want to buy something?" Why does the brine send you back to land unscathed but consumes everyone else? Why does the narrative position the Arisen as being hunted by the Queen, only for the game to allow you to run around her city unimpeded, or hell, run directly into the Queen's chambers without anyone asking what's up? Why do the villains turn into allies without much resistance? Why does everyone instantly know you're the chosen one anyway? Well, it turns out these instances are supposed to feel jarring because every one of them is artificial by design. Alright, before we go any further, maybe I'm cutting the game a lot of slack here. Sometimes a shallow mechanic is just a shallow mechanic, but the strength of this late game reveal that the world is living out one big stage play means that these incongruities can be cited as examples of the Great Will's strict design, whether intentional or not. The world revolves around the Arisen, so of course character stories don't extend beyond their interactions. In the context of the universe, they literally have no other purpose. They believe they have free will, but they have anything but. The Pathfinder specifically is essentially there to keep everyone on track and playing their roles. This is even driven home by the fact that the Arisen is constantly aided by the Pathfinder, who gives them a literal helping hand when the preordained narrative threatens to veer off track, making sure it plays out as it should. Hell, they're the ones who free the Arisen and tell them about their destiny after they lose their memories. The story was unraveling, so they arrive to get it back on track and the Arisen fulfilling their destiny. I think it's the pawns that embody this theme the best though. All the way through the game, as someone who hadn't played the original, I really struggled with how they specifically were presented. I was constantly asking, why are these characters so subservient? Why are they so disposable? Why do they feel so hollow? Why do they feel so gamey? Well, the answer is because that's the role they've been created for, essentially being human-looking machines that only exist to help you perpetuate the cycle. Unlike the other NPCs in the game, these guys don't even have the illusion of free will or agency. They are not masters of their own destinies by design. And that's not even to mention how this twist in particular recontextualizes the controversial Dragon's Plague mechanic. If you don't know, this is a disease that can be contracted by pawns in the game, and its symptoms include them ignoring your orders and being verbally rude and antagonistic towards their master. Now, I'm not here to say this is exactly what the developers intended with this mechanic, or even what Dragon's Plague is officially, but I do think it's interesting that its symptoms are that of someone thinking for themselves, acting on their own volition, and that's punished. By going off script, they're threatening the cycle and they're not playing their roles, so bye-bye. And all of this, so far, I think, is a cool little twist that recontextualizes the previous tens of hours of game that you've played and the story therein, but the true ending segment that follows takes it even one step further. After you defy your fate, you're given the impossible task of saving a world about to collapse. Because yeah, it turns out the Pathfinder wasn't lying when he said that the cycle keeps everything together. In doing so, you repel the brine forces, rally the people you've met, and ultimately sacrifice yourself to restart the world without the Great Will or the Pathfinder overseeing everything and everyone, and with everyone's stories no longer being preordained. No brine, no fate, no roles, just endless possibility, both good and bad. Even better, it's explained that this breaking of the cycle is down to you. And that's not you, the Arisen, that's you, the player, the person I'm speaking to right now who might have played Dragon's Dogma 2. The Great Will has control over the world, but they don't have control over you. The real human holding the controller or tapping that keyboard. After all, the beauty of video games is that their authors can construct tightly woven narratives and dictate the presentation and cutscenes and gameplay, but even in a title like The Last of Us, they can't account for every little bit of player behavior. Your Joel won't kill people the same way that my Joel does. I might have him spinning around at those non-cutscene story segments where you're supposed to be talking and taking things seriously, which probably is not what the developers intended you to do in that section. And this sense of player agency and the authorship push and pull between devs and players is broadened in RPGs like Dragon's Dogma, where player choice and control over the narrative is a key selling point. As I mentioned about the beginning, the joy of Dragon's Dogma 2 is all in that sense of emergent gameplay and its structured quests, which mean that you have to rely on your own instincts and freedom as a player to get through them. The player-dictated element is what makes the game special, more than the sum of its parts. Your Arisen might have accidentally killed an entire town with Dragon's Plague, mine might have used the ballista to kill the lesser dragon in Melv. Your Arisen might have helped Wilhelmina get revenge and flee the city, mine might have never gone to see her at all. Your Arisen might have chosen to kill the dragon and restart the cycle, mine might have risked it all for a shot of freedom. And it's this player freedom that the true ending of Dragon's Dogma 2 ultimately celebrates. In the final moment, it's little ungovernable you, the one thing that the greater will cannot script, that can break the boundaries of this world with an act of defiance. It's your choice that derailed the script, the person behind the controller who made the Arisen more than just an NPC. Without your input, that's all they would have been, as seen by the other failed Arisens in the game. And that's a storytelling beat only possible in this medium, through its unique relationship between author and consumer, through interactivity and the admission that, try as they might, developers just don't have control over everything. And this is also celebrated in how the true ending sequence is structured in terms of its quest design. The main missions set during the Dragon's Dogma cycle previously surprisingly lacked flexibility, especially for an RPG. Though there are small amounts of choice in the main thread, the main quest needs to be tackled in a specific way to reach the end of the story, echoing the fact that the Arisen story was never as open-ended as it appeared in the first place. The missions in the true ending, however, are almost entirely dictated by, again, you. The structure is the exact opposite of the main quests. Here, you have 4 beams of light that appear on the map, and you can investigate them, or not, in any order you want. You're not told what interacting with these portals will do, it's the player's own curiosity that will help them figure it out. You're also only given a vague prompt to visit the leaders of the towns that you've been to previously, and if you do pursue this quest, it's then up to you whether you want to complete the subsequent ones and evacuate each population to safety. Even better, the success of these evacuations is predicated on whether you optionally chose to interact with these people previously in the game and completed their optional personal missions. So in this sense, you're directly rewarded for your agency as you previously sought these quests out on your own volition. And even better, 99% of everything in this true ending is optional. Hell, the way you get to the true ending at all is optional. The game doesn't offer that up. You probably saw it online like I did. If you ignore all of these prompts, the brine fog will progress throughout the map and destroy the settlements and the people inhabiting them. The The true ending segment then is pretty much as close as you can possibly get to true player freedom in an RPG. Like with the breaking of the cycle, the world and its inhabitants are ultimately saved because you choose to save them. No waypoints, no pathfinder telling you what to do, not even really an indication that your time is gonna be limited. If you mess around and go grinding for better gear, you might end up sacrificing some of the inhabitants to do so, but hey, at the end of the day, that's your choice. There are other changes in the endgame that emphasize this sense of freedom as well. Fairy stones, rare fast travel items that severely limited how quickly you could get around the world, are now plentiful. So are port crystals, which dictate where you can and can't fast travel to. As mentioned, the brine-filled seas are also gone, opening up new shortcuts that make getting around the world on foot easier than ever. And you have the power to bypass the previous restrictions and just ping around settlements with the port crystals if you want. However, as much as a celebration, all of this is also an acknowledgement that RPGs, even the ones with the most player freedom, still have their own gods that set the boundaries of what's possible. Like the Great Wheel, developers of games set up their own versions of the brine to limit the player's actions, whether that's through locked doors or invisible walls. Like the Pathfinder as well, developers allow for the illusion of decision-making and personalization, but ultimately you're still locked into the finite choices that they've made available for you and have accounted for. Going completely off script will more or less just break the game, kind of how like going off script completely destroys the world in Dragon's Dogma 2, though intentionally in a way here. So the end of Dragon's Dogma 2 with its crumbling world could be an acknowledgement that true player freedom is impossible in games. There inherently needs to be a god. There inherently needs to be that relationship with the author and the consumer. There needs to be a set of coders establishing a framework, a script, you might say, for quests, progression, and available choices, or the whole experience would come crumbling down. As soon as you start up that developer-player relationship, limitations have to be imposed, or it wouldn't work. Now there's something to be said about video games that know they're video games. Titles that use the inherent playability of the medium as a tool to drive home the themes of their stories often result in works held up as the best in the industry. We've seen it happen with Metal Gear Solid 2, we've seen it happen with Spec Ops: The Line, and now, surprisingly, at least for me anyway, I think we've seen it with Dragon's Dogma 2. So that's my needlessly complicated analysis of the Dragon's Dogma 2 ending. Seriously, I finished this game and then immediately woke up the next day, wrote 2,800 words about it and had to get it out. So there's probably so much I've actually missed. This is a very early analysis. I can't wait to finally jump on the Reddit and watch other videos because I've been in my own bubble with this and I want to see what other people think. Maybe this is the common consensus. Maybe people think this is completely overthinking it. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this game, and if you enjoyed the true ending, let me know in the comments, let me know what you think of this reading, and let me know if there's any others I should check out. For now though, I've been Josh, thank you so much for watching and indulging, and I'll see you soon. Also, I didn't know what to do with my hands in this video. You'll notice it's a new setup, and I got a table there, so I was just like, here, whoa. See you next time.